Good morning everybody from my solitary confinement. I can report that life is hard in here, but the food's been okay. I get out for exercise once a day and I'm looking forward to my release. Anyway, I hope everyone else is getting out and making the most of this exercise we're allowed to be doing. I went out for a cycle yesterday and it was a highlight of my day. It was good just to get out in the fresh air. So for my next video I wanted to talk a little bit about a lot of people when they start in photography, you put your camera on automatic setting and just forget about it and shoot pictures, and that's fine when you're just starting out and you don't really understand technology and you're just maybe trying to get a feel for the camera. But at some point you do need to, if you want to become a little bit more creative, you do need to start to understand how to use your camera in a more manual nature. Now, I don't expect people to pick up a camera as a beginner and go straight into shooting manual because it's quite a difficult thing. I started shooting in Aperture priority. Now, if you don't know what that is, on your dial on your camera, I'll show you what it looks like here, you'll see a whole selection of different settings, but the one for Aperture priority is usually an A or an AV. So if you set your camera to that, what happens is your camera is still fairly automatic, but you are controlling the aperture setting on your lens and the camera does everything else based around that. Now if you don't understand what the aperture on your lens is, here's a little, I'll show you a little diagram of basically the aperture value is how far open the iris is on your camera. So if you imagine your iris on your camera, the basically the hole in the center, if you think of that like the iris of your eye, closes down when you're in bright light and opens up when it's lower light to allow you to see better. Now your camera does something very similar, and if I'm working in low light, I want that aperture to be as wide open as I can so I can get more light in. There's two things that your aperture controls, how much light's getting into your camera, but it also controls something called depth of field. Now if you're new to photography, you've probably heard this term and wondered what it is. Maybe you do know what it is, but the depth of field is how much in your picture is in focus. So you've got your subject in focus, and if you've got a shallow depth of field, your background will be out of focus. If you've got it on a narrow aperture like f11 or f16 where you're shut right down, you're going to get a lot more in focus. So when I started, basically I was shooting on the widest aperture and the lowest number if I was shooting people, and if I was going to shoot a landscape I'd be shooting at the other end of the scale, so f11 or f16 or whatever the lens would go to get more in focus. I hope that makes sense, but I'm going to show you some examples of some people images that I've got here to show the different effects. So the first image I'm showing you here is Nicola was posing for me here, and this one's shot at f11, and as you can see I've cropped it in just so you can see it was actually a full length picture, but you can see that there's a lot in focus in this picture. It works for this particular image because that's the style I was looking for. And if we move on to the next picture I've taken of Nicola, this one is shot at f2, and you can see everything other than her and a couple of leaves are out of focus in the foreground and the background, and it really focuses your eye on the subject and makes it stand out more. Then I'm moving on to a shoot I did with Stephanie, and she, I've shot her here in the first image at f10, and as you can see there's lots of this image is in focus. Right back you can see trees like 200 or 300 meters away and they're still fairly sharp, so that's shooting at a narrow aperture. I've shot her in this one at 1.4, so everything is out of focus apart from her eyes. Even parts of her face are starting to lose focus. As you can see in the next images, I've got railings behind her and obviously they're very distracting. I've shot this one at f4 just to show as an example, and then what I've done is I've taken her a little bit further away from the background and I've opened that aperture up to f2 now, so it's wide open, almost wide open on that lens, and as you can see, everything's really out of focus and soft in the background, and it no longer causes a distraction. Sometimes you won't want to use it that way, so what I say to everyone is just to practice, and find out what works for you and what works in different situations. This image here, Steph with a plane. This plane was actually used in a Batman movie. I wanted to get the plane and the subject in focus here, so I've shot this one again. I think it's shot at f10 this time, and it was important to show the detail of the plane as well. But as I say, you just need to learn how to use it, and then when you go to a shoot, that's the first decision you're probably going to make, is what aperture to set your camera on. What I'm saying is just to go away and practice. It's difficult just now because we're all on lockdown, but if you've got kids at home or pets, you can try it out on them. There's nothing stopping you, and if you're like me in solitary confinement, you can just find some objects around the house. I'm sure you've got something that you can practice on, and let me know how you get on. Put some comments in the comments box below and tell me how you get on with it. And yeah, click subscribe so you get updates. I'm going to try and do these every day and cover as many different subjects as possible. And again, if you've got anything you want covered, just drop a message in the comments bar below, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.